marathon day. Yes. Yes.
They fed us when you brought me a sandwich. We've all
Okay.
eaten.
Are you up? Because I'm not. No, you're not either?
On Zoom? We're not Zooming.
Oh, I thought they said we would be seeing the Zooms. Right.
Oh, it's already changed.
So if
Yes.
I
Thank you.
need to see if they're okay, have a question. I just okay. This is quite the
What time was our first break this morning?
I know.
No, I said, what time was our
Again.
first break? I took Tylenol on Thursday.
Did you?
So I'm
This
trying to
morning?
this
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call the July 14th, 2020 special school board meeting to order. The first item is to accept our agenda. Madam Superintendent, are there any revisions to the agenda as printed?
Yes, we do. We have revisions. Add item 5, COVID-1 2021 school calendar, July 13, 2020. See attachment. That concludes the revisions for this evening.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Board members, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the agenda for July 14th, 2020 with the noted revisions.
Move for approval.
Second?
Okay, we have a first and a second. Is there any discussion? Mr. Townsend?
Yeah, a quick question about what I suggested earlier, which was us sending a letter to the Polk County Commission requesting a mask mandate for the county as something that would be helpful in eventually getting brick and mortar schools open. Is that something that we could add to the agenda to consider? Can we do it by consensus? And or what do you think about considering that?
I would ordinarily say because of the length of the meeting tonight, I know that will require some discussion in order for us to do that. Would you be willing to hold off until next Tuesday when we have our quick board meeting to discuss it?
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think we can go on the record, or at least I can, on the record for the media here, saying that I want us to do that. I'm happy to go ahead and talk about it next week.
Okay, I appreciate your patience. It's going to be a long night, so thank you. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those like sign. The motion carries unanimously. Now I would like to ask Board Member Sarah Beth Reynolds if you would please give our invocation today. And go ahead, Ms. Reynolds.
Thank you. Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for the opportunity to serve the children of our community. We ask for comfort for our neighbors suffering during this time, those suffering from job loss and loss of income, those battling with COVID, and those who have lost loved ones, those who are battling with depression and the sense of normalcy that has been lost. We pray for our community as we move forward together into this new normal. Lord, you remind us in 2 Timothy that you have not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. Please give us wisdom and guidance as we make critical decisions in the days to come. Help us to remember that you are in control. Thank you for the incredible resource you have given us in our task force, our staff, and our local experts. Help us to remember that health and safety have many components beyond COVID. Give us the discernment to balance the varying needs within our community. Help us to all treat each other with respect, grace, and love, serving as role models for our students. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Ms. Reynolds. At this time, I would like to ask everybody to please stand, and I would like to ask Board Member Kay Fields to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And you will note that the flag is in the right side of the room there.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and you may be seated.
Okay.
The next item on our agenda is comments on agenda items. And before we begin, I would like to state that each one of our board members, we want to hear your message. To that end, I would like to respectfully request that each person that comes forward to speak tonight be considerate and courteous as you address our board. Also, please wear your mask while in the building, except when addressing the board. Practice social distancing and sanitize and wash your hands accordingly. For the audience members who come forward to speak about an item on the agenda, I will call your name, and then when you come forward, if you'd be so kind to state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, so let's get started. First person to this evening, I'd like to call up Stephanie Yoakum. Good evening.
Stephanie Yoakum, President of the Polk Education Association, 730 East Davison Street, Bartow. So I'm here tonight to speak to two agenda items, and I'm going to can put them into one comment for time's sake. So the first thing is I wanted to address the calendar. In this morning's workshop, I was very appreciative of the move that our district made to push the start date of school to August 24th. I think that's going to give us a lot of extra time to plan and get hard data to collect. But our message is still the same. We are really urging this board as our constitutional officers to make the decision to not open brick and mortar on August 24th. We need to be in a distance learning e-school format. I appreciate the extra time that moving school start date to the 24th is going to give us in planning. But we need to, and this is going to give us time to work out the inequities that we saw in the fourth quarter with some of our at-risk populations. But we cannot put our employees and our staff or our community in jeopardy, and it's not worth even one life. And so I'm urging this board, you 7 that are elected by us in Polk County, to please, when that vote comes, probably sooner rather than later, that we need you guys to open with distance learning on August 24th. The second item that I would like to speak to is the superintendent search. I am very happy for Superintendent Byrd and going into retirement. That is an aspiration that we all think about, even when we first start our careers, is when we're going to be able to retire and travel and enjoy life. So I wish her all the goodness and happy and health in that state with her and her husband and her family. And as we move forward, what I would like to see in our superintendent search and the candidates that we interview is their willingness to work with labor. That's a pretty near and dear piece of my heart. I want them to be able to be collaborative with community, our board, labor, our teachers, our staff, our students, and I think that is something that Mrs. Byrd has done well, and we need to continue to build on that. And so as we are looking for a new superintendent, those are some of the qualities that I would like to see. I would also urge you in the search committee that labor be represented on that committee, that PEA and AFSCME have a seat at the table with that search committee so that we can represent our employees. And so with that, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Yoakum, and I assure you, all the 4 search firms that spoke to us today indicated that, and we could not possibly have a successful search without including everyone in the community. But thank you for your comments. The next person is Chris Olson.
Good evening, I am Chris Olson. I served on the task force, and I am also a teacher at Stanbaugh Middle. As you consider delayed opening, what is the number? I ask each of you to answer all of the following, not just the question directed at you. Ms. Fields, as of this morning, there were 7,630 reported cases in Polk. What is the number of cases needed before we only have a virtual opening? Ms. Miller, we both know 6 feet in classrooms won't happen. So what is the number that breaks CDC guidelines that lets you sleep at night? Ms. Cunningham, because we can't social distance, what is the number of children alone in a hospital with no family allowed in their room, on their stomach, with a ventilator tube down their throat to help them breathe that makes brick and mortar opening unacceptable? Ms. Reynolds, what is the number of those children that die from COVID that will make you look back and wish you had voted tonight for a virtual-only reopening? Mr. Townsend, I have never been in a school that didn't have about half of the cafeteria workers not be high risk. So what is the number of lunch ladies we should sacrifice rather than vote for a virtual reopening? Ms. Fortney, what is the number of dead teachers that is acceptable so your conscience will be able to deal with it? Mr. Bridges, what is the number of cases you were willing to settle when families and staff and students began suing the district for intentionally putting their loved ones at risk? Mr. Wilson, what is the number of dollars you are willing to spend on those lawsuits, on additional insurance claims, on sick leave, on quarantine pay, and on psychologists to go into a school that experienced a death that could have been prevented if you had only virtually opened instead? Ms. Byrd, what is the number of funerals you are willing to attend of students because this board voted for a brick and mortar option? How many teacher funerals are you willing to attend because this board thought the risk was worth it? How many administrator funerals are you willing to attend because you were unwilling to stand up to DeSantis as Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, and Broward counties have done? How many support staff funerals are you willing to attend because, unlike Duval attorney Ronald Meyer has done, you are unwilling to tell the DOE that they have overexerted their constitutional authority and cannot dictate how school boards decide reopening of their schools? All of you, at all of these funerals, what is the number of grieving siblings, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, spouses, and friends are you ready to look in the eye and say to them, on July 14th, I made the right decision to reopen brick and mortar schools because your loved one was an acceptable risk. Please know, it was worth your loss for my vote. What is that number? I served on the task force. I asked what is the number more than once, but never got an answer. But right here, right now, on the record, you must tell me and the community, what is the number? If your number is 0, I know you will vote for a virtual-only reopening, even with a delayed opening. But if you vote for a brick-and-mortar option, you need to publicly announce to me, what is your number? So what is your number?
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Howard Wiggs.
Hello, everyone. I'm Howard Wiggs, 4602 Highlands Place Drive in Lakeland. As I've stated previously, I'm hopeful that through your support and through the support of our countywide community, we can convince Superintendent Byrd to remain with the district. In January, you received a letter from Lakeland Mayors Bill Mutz and Gal Fields, as well as myself, in support of Superintendent Byrd. Some of you may have the misperception that Mayor Fields has been more engaged in educational issues since Superintendent Byrd was hired, or perhaps since Board Member Kay Fields was elected. Those assumptions are not correct. Why then bring Mayor Fields into this discussion? Well, in the mid-90s, Mayor Fields was one of a handful of leaders who influenced the Lakeland City Commission to partner with the Chamber of Commerce to create and launch Lakeland Vision. One of Lakeland Vision's key initiatives was to bring forth a public discussion on moving from an elected superintendent to one who was appointed by the school board. Sadly, at the time, it was unclear if the Polk School District could adequately recover from the downward spiral in which it found itself. As a result, the chamber leadership was actively advocating that Lakeland pull out of the public school system and convert to a self-controlled charter system. After much debate, it was decided to support having a professional administrator appointed by the school board as the superintendent. Today, there are many folks who believe that we are on the verge of losing the best and most effective superintendent that we've ever had. The perceptions and beliefs of many are that one of the major reasons for this possibility is the interference by some school board members in the superintendent's duties and responsibilities. I believe that it is clear in Florida state statutes, as well as in the contract with the superintendent, that the school board is to establish policies and the superintendent is to implement those policies. The fact that we are in danger of losing this exceptionally qualified superintendent may well be linked to the misguided actions of one or more school board members in overstepping their statutory authority. Frankly, there is no way at this time that we should be spending taxpayer dollars to conduct a search for her replacement. The upheaval and unrest this has created will more than likely negatively affect the quality of the applicant pool available to us. This reawakens the fear that our school district will again begin a backward spiral towards a place we worked so hard to move away from. I urge you not to let this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next person is Micah Turner.
Good evening, Micah Turner, 1020 Golf Course Parkway. Opening schools back up must be a priority. It must be for the mental, social, educational well-being of our children, but it should not be done in an unsafe manner. While I am a strong constitutional conservative and stand opposed to most of my party, this isn't a political issue. I understand that you've given us a choice of full-time class, part-time class, or full-time e-learning, but that's not a choice at all in many of our cases. First of all, if some students are there full-time, then the students that show up part-time are exposed to the same dangers the full-time students have. My family situation is a special one and specific. I have an ESC child in middle school and an autistic nonverbal child that will be starting his first year of school this year. So full-time e-learning really isn't an option for either one of them. However, my wife is extremely immune compromised. She has no spleen, no appendix, and her thyroid doesn't work. If she catches the flu, she ends up in the hospital for days and sometimes weeks. Her last spell with the flu nearly killed her. Consequently, I'm not being overdramatic when I express my fear that if she were to contract COVID, it could kill her. Please understand, I'm not ready to lose my wife, and my children aren't ready to lose their mother. By opening schools full-time, that's the position and the danger that you're putting them in. My situation isn't unique. I've spoken to many other families and teachers who are in the same position. So I'm pleading with you to delay the full-time opening of face-to-face instruction and work on implementing a better plan, possibly one that would entail part-time in the class and part-time e-learning, maybe rotating students and shifts and teachers changing classes instead of students. The Florida statutes clearly states you're the ones that have the authority to run the schools. Nowhere in our state constitution or statutes is this authority conferred upon any other entity, to include the Florida Board of Education or the Commissioner of Education. No, it's laid at your hands. You, the people we elected to represent us, the people we elected to be our voice, the people we elected to not only ensure our children receive the best possible education, but protect our children while doing this as well. By choosing to go down this path, you've not only chosen to throw us and our children to the wolves, but you've chosen to do so to our teachers as well. They've not been given the tools or training and preparation for this situation. How can any rational thinking person justify that we have to close bars and gyms and limit restaurants, yet opening schools full-time to our children is okay? Please consider what you're doing. Other school districts have taken a stand, won't you as well? What will you do when a teacher or a parent like my wife contracts a virus and dies from it being ignored, ignoring our pleas to open full-time not happening? What would you think will happen? Because I can assure you, if that happens to my wife and family, I'm coming to hold you accountable. I can assure your decision on this issue will be remembered on Election Day.
Thank you, sir. Next person is Mr. Gal Fields.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you for allowing us to be here. Name is Gal Fields, 5604 Hillview Court in Lakeland. First of all, I want to apologize to Mrs. Bird. Mrs. Bird, I owe you and your husband and family an apology that due to my relationship by virtue of marriage to one of the school board members, I feel I haven't engaged enough in dealing with some of the behavior of the board that has led us to where we are in your retirement. But I also want to note in your retirement letter, after you listed a number of accomplishments that you have enjoyed with your team during your time as the superintendent, you also pointed out that due to the behavior of some board members is why you were resigning. Is that correct? Would two of those board members by name be Board Member Townsend and Miller? Okay, thank you. This is for all the board. When you were sworn in, you took an oath of office that you would uphold the U.S. Constitution and the Florida Constitution. You also said that you uphold the laws of the state of Florida. One of the things that's embedded in the state laws are when there's a contract, a valid contract in the eyes of the state of Florida, that you would honor that as well. That is part of what you're supposed to support. The contract I'm referring to is the one with the superintendent. And routinely, by behavior of some board members, that contract has been violated. And I want you to understand the superintendent belongs to all the employees, all the people of the county. All the employees of the school district belong to all the people of the county, the same people who elected you and put you in the seats that belong to them. And when you allow what's going on to occur, you're dishonoring and demeaning the people that you're supposed to represent. As a board, you say you abhor and reject bullying in the schools, yet the most blatant bullying takes place on this board, and it is affecting employees of this school district. And that means it's dishonoring and disrespecting the people that you represent. The only people who can police the board, the behavior of the board between elections, are the other board members. And to give you a visual, if George Floyd were the superintendent, if Officer Chauvin was Board Member Townsend, if the other officer that had the two knees in the back of Mr. Floyd were Board Member Miller, then that means the other board members are standing by watching and being complicit. That cannot be. You're going to have to choose another superintendent. They're going to be looking at the behavior of this board. It can't just be Mrs. Fields speaking up about this behavior consistently. It has to be everyone doing it consistently. When you fail to do that, you're dismeaning and dishonoring the people that you represent. That should not occur. We cannot deliver our best effort to our people in this county, the employees of this county, but more importantly to the students, when the behavior that goes on the board is causing us to spend taxpayers' money to do unnecessary searches to replace, as what Mayor Wiggs said, as many believe is the best and most effective superintendent this district has ever had. Thank you, and I hope you receive those comments the way they were intended.
Thank you, sir. Next person would be Anita Carson.
Sorry, my comments are on my phone. Just one second. Okay, thank you. My name's Anita Carson. I live at 141 Hamlet Loop in Davenport, Florida. First, I want to thank the task force members and for their time, their effort in creating the recommendations that the board received this morning. Also, I wanted to thank Superintendent Byrd, John Hill, Michelle Townley for your guidance on the task force. I think that you all put in a lot of work and did an amazing job. Also, thank you to Sarah Fortney for stepping up to be the board member on the task force. Your experience was incredibly valuable there. I wanted to speak to the agenda item on the calendar. I'm very happy about the recommendation that the school is being delayed by 2 weeks. That gives us at least a little bit more time to train our staff and to make sure our school sites are ready to welcome our kids when we open brick and mortar. But I also wanted to make sure that I said that we are not ready for brick and mortar right now with the scientific number that we have, with the health data that we have. Speaking to the doctors this morning, that was very, very enlightening information, and I hope that we are heeding that. It sounds like the superintendent was heeding that this morning. I'm hoping that when the board comes back to vote to go back to brick and mortar, that we continue to heed those health officials. It's incredibly important for community health, for our staff, and for our students. So that was my biggest piece, is on the calendar. Yes, vote to push it back, but also vote for the flexibility to open brick and mortar when it's physically safe to do so, and right now it's really not. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Right, I will do that next. Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Leo Longworth.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, Madam Chair and board members, Leo Longworth, 1395 East Magnolia Street, Bartow, Florida. Madam Chair and board members, it concerns many that Mrs. Byrd referenced in her notice of retirement letter that some of you have either acted or attempted to act in ways that compromises your and the superintendent's roles and responsibilities. She also stated that the willful and increasing overreach of the board has been unprecedented in her 32 years of experience. You have made it very difficult for her, and it's baffling as to why. Nevertheless, she's been able to achieve many positive accomplishments for the district. Her work speaks for itself. Let me remind you that each of you took an oath to uphold the laws and Constitution of the state of Florida. Your role is policymaking, rulemaking, overall district governance, ultimate authority for students student and employee discipline, and authority to hire and fire the superintendent, the board attorney, and the auditor, not district employees, regardless of how much some of you may desire to do that. Take an excerpt from Article 48 of the Constitution of the State of Florida. The superintendent is responsible for the administration and management of the schools. Okay, so the roles get muddled. When they do, board members try to exercise administrative functions that are more properly the role of the superintendent. You are the policy and rule makers and ultimate judges of many things, but you are not to be engaged in carrying out the mission and administering the rules and policies. When you do that, you violate your oath of office that you took to uphold the Constitution and laws and your own contract. When a board member makes a statement that we are the elected board and the staff is the unelected body, the implication is that we can do whatever we can or whatever we desire. There have been instances of board members making comments about wanting to take actions against certain administrators and board members wanting to become involved with the management of district employees. Billy Townsend has said that he wishes to be able to hire and fire school administrators, school board administrators. This is wrong, and when you stand by and say nothing, you are just as guilty. It is micromanaging and illegal, even though Mrs. Byrd has tendered her retirement, which we hate. But I trust that you will banish engaging or the intent of engaging in the interference of the job that she is charged to do. It's okay to disagree, but it's important to stay in your lane and remember it's about the children. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Okay, that is all the folks that have come forward to speak about an item on the agenda. And now, Mrs. Worthington, I don't think I have to ask. There are several folks that have submitted comments via email. So would you please be so kind? Oh, we have a comment? We normally don't have comments at this time. Ms. Worthington, if you'd go ahead and start reading our emails, please give us their name, address, and comments to be read into the record. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Our first comment comes from Steve Abney, 234 Gulf Air Boulevard, Winter Haven, Florida, 33884. Greetings. I will not be able to attend the meeting because I see at-risk individuals in my community daily. Enclosed are my thoughts. Please add them to the record. If it is possible to have someone read them aloud, please do. Dear Polk County School Board, as you begin deliberations on a new school superintendent, please take time to honor Superintendent Byrd for her career of public service. She has served honorably in the highest government office in Polk County in terms of budget, employment, and impact on our area's future. She deserves our thanks and best wishes. In seeking her replacement, I ask that you keep the process in mind for now. There has been speculation in the newspaper about people. This is not the time for that. Develop the process. Trust the process to provide the best result. I recommend you hire an executive search firm. Have them meet with a variety of community groups to learn what those individuals believe is required at this time. These listening sessions are essential to building the list of desired and required knowledges, skills, and abilities. They also serve to foster credibility in the process. Have the firm conduct a nationwide search and bring 5 to 10 candidates to you for consideration. The candidate pool should be diverse. Make the search firm explain how they decided who made the cut. Have the firm provide not only a CV on each of the finalists, but also candid feedback from the candidate's current school board, local newspaper editor, the union presidents, PTA presidents, and others in the community. Obtain this for current and previous positions. Make sure the firm conducts a thorough background check, including finances, allegations of misconduct, legal issues, and scandals by those under their supervision. Then I see your job as selecting the best servant leader from among those. All remaining candidates will be highly qualified. They will all have outstanding credentials and a record of achievement. Not all will have love.
The opposite of love is ego. The opposite of love is greed. The opposite of love is fear. The opposite of love is hatred. The opposite of love is indifference. You will find highly educated, experienced, successful candidates who instill fear, reject them. Fear breeds tribalism, a cover-your-back culture, and suboptimal results. You may find others who want the job for the power or the title or the money or because it is the next step. Reject them as well. A servant leader can change a culture. So too can a sociopath. You may not be able to see love in the resumes of the finalists. However, if they lack love, you will find its opposite in the comments of those who dealt with them daily. In their previous positions, did they genuinely love children, parents, faculty, and staff?
We'll go to the next one.
Okay. Our next comment comes from Larry Milhorn. To whom it may concern, I want to thank the superintendent for the job she has done for our district. I too hate to see her go, but her family deserves to have time with her on their terms and when she wants. The job of superintendent is demanding and takes away a lot of time away from her family. Yes, her staying would not be a bad thing, but since she has announced her retirement, she should not be asked to stay. It should be her decision. I'm leaving as AFSCME president in October, and that is my decision for me and my family, as it should be hers. Again, thank you, Mrs. Bird, and I wish you all the best. You are always invited to our Christmas party. Thank you, Larry. Our next comment comes from Paula Cardinale. As you all know, Polk County is a district with an appointed superintendent. The board appoints this person. The people elect our board. They are the only voices for the voters. How can the district administration make such important decisions without consulting the board? I'm so baffled by this. It leaves me feeling helpless and voiceless. Shame on the district administration. Our next comment comes from Kimberly Jo Foster. I was excited when Mrs. Bird became our superintendent. I was proud to have a woman of color as our superintendent and thought that she could lead Polk County School District into a more progressive era. But the last few months have shown me how truly wrong I was about Jackie Bird's ability to lead. Mrs. Bird's handling of the January rally in Tally was abysmal. It showed her lack of leadership and her willingness to help the FLDOE rule by fear. The rally in Tally is where my respect for Mrs. Bird ultimately began to wane. Next, Mrs. Bird announced her retirement. What kind of leader announces their departure during a crisis? What kind of educator leaves during the school year in the middle of a pandemic? For me, this shows that Mrs. Bird only took this position for the money and political clout she thought she could gain from it. The political clout argument is only strengthened by her trip to California to rub elbows with people who literally want to dismantle public education. Then she releases 2 letters about her retirement, with one stating some board members were the impetus for her retirement. Ultimately, she was unwilling to give details or name those board members when questioned publicly. I can only describe her letters and unwillingness to confront those she has an issue with as a real mean girls move. In this current educational paradigm of test and punishment, we need a progressive board more than ever. And if you're unwilling to work with our progressive board members, then you're right. Jackie, you need to go. Sarah, Billy, and Lisa, thank you for listening to teachers. Thank you for giving us a voice. And teachers will continue to support your efforts to improve the Polk County School District. Lori, Lynn, Kay, and Sarah Beth, we are coming for your seats eventually. Get on the board, the progressive train, or get out of its way. You are an impediment, not an asset. For our next superintendent, I would like to recommend someone like Dr. Michael Hines. Dr. Michael Hines is an author. He has spoken at TED Talks and has traveled to Finland to learn more about their school system. He stands up to his current Department of Education publicly. He believes teachers and students are more than test scores. He wishes to eliminate high-stakes, standardized testing. He emphasizes educating the whole child. He wants kids to have more recess and considers himself lucky to work with a progressive board. If we can't hire him, we need someone like him to lead us forward. Our next comment comes from Kimberly Elmhorst. Dear members of the Polk County School Board, please see the forwarded email below to Rick Elmhorst and others at Bay News 9. In our opinion, paragraph 3 is a slimy, not-so-veiled threat directed towards our 20-year-old biracial daughter, a college student. Please let the record state that we take great offense to the notion that Mr. Townsend, in an elected position to advocate on the behalf of our youth, would stoop so low as to use our daughter as a pawn in his ongoing and systematic campaign of intimidation of minority women. This is a violation of decency, the public trust, and good morals. We are currently in consultation with legal counsel regarding how to react. Clearly, we demand that in the interim, Billy the Bully cease and desist references with regard to our daughter. Before this email, we were not aware who William Allen was. We were also not aware of Billy's bullying of Superintendent Jackie Bird, an African-American woman, and his efforts to drive her out of her position in order to replace her with someone more of his kind. Now we are, and we support anyone who would seek to replace Billy the Bully. Why is Mr. Townsend's unhappiness always directed at non-white women? Respectfully, Kim and Kurt Elmhorst. Would you like me to read the attachment she asked be read? Hello, my name is Billy Townsend. I'm a school board member in Polk County. I received a public records request from Rick Elmhorst last night for text messages between certain dates between myself and Polk Superintendent Jackie Bird. I have already complied with those requests through our records custodian. I even extended the dates on one of them a bit because I think it provides Rick with helpful context for whatever story he is doing. In addition, I have provided all of my texts with the superintendent dating to our first text in March 2017. I have asked our records custodian to review them and redact any information that might be exempt from release because of personal health information or other such confidentiality issue. When that process is finished, Rick is welcome to review them. I'll also be posting them publicly. I trust this is helpful to whatever story Rick is planning. I also would like to share the following screenshot with Rick and his editors, I believe Kelsey Elmhorst, who appears to be a strong supporter of my opponent in the August school board election, is Rick's niece. I have no problem with that, and I look forward to talking to Rick about whatever story he is doing. Indeed, I'm always available. Is that it? Our next comment comes from Kara Mulhenny in Lakeland. I want an educated business person who has dealt with government as well as the private sector, one that can bring unity to an otherwise broken system, one that will fight for the people they represent, to put education of our children first and foremost. Our next comment comes from Crystal Flores in regards to the new super. I'm looking for someone who understands special needs, and I'd like the board to hire within the district. I would love Billy Townsend or someone as passionate as Billy to be the super. Our next comment is from Jennifer Sabin in regards to the superintendent search. As the board looks forward to the privilege of choosing our next superintendent, I wanted to share my thoughts on what I hope you will look for during the search. Given the political circumstances in Florida, that Polk County has $1.7 billion budget, more than 13,000 employees, and 100,000 plus student body with diverse needs due to geography and socioeconomics, the next superintendent should have the ability to robustly defend the values of public education at all levels, experience in the classroom and leading a large public educational institution, and a demonstrated ability to inspire confidence in teachers. I know you face a difficult task, but have confidence that if you keep our motto, students first, in front of you at all times, Polk County will be better for your effort. Jennifer Saban. Our next comment comes from Sherry Ross. In light of the uncertain times in which we are operating, I wanted to address several incredibly important issues facing our district. We should thankfully recognize Ms. Bird's service to our district. She has put a humanizing face on many of the natural disasters we have faced. Photos of her visiting hurricane shelters showed her large heart for students in time of need. In that regard, she has been an excellent example of the care and concern that our staff should continually emulate. While I laud her compassion, I feel that it is time that we respect her wishes to retire. She has led us to the best of her ability, and we need to allow her to step aside for a different type of leader. In these politically tumultuous times, we must seek a superintendent who will combine Bird's caring with a strong leadership ethic. We need someone who is willing to stand up to the DOE on the behalf of staff and students, not merely cave during power plays like the teacher rally firing fiasco. As we face the extremely costly and possibly deadly consequences of COVID-19, we require a fierce proponent for staff. While the same state mandate was issued to all districts in Florida, other school superintendents challenged this completely political directive with scientific facts. In addition, these districts created multiple options for a safer school reopening. Ms. Bird heard the same information and capitulated to the unsafe and unfunded demands that a full school reopening entails. As an immune-compromised veteran teacher, I view this action as being outside the public health and safety interest. The amount of exponential exposure that a fully open 5-day plan creates is irresponsible. I watched the last school board work session and following meeting, waiting for an in-depth plan discussion. Planning was barely covered, and the task force was mentioned as looking over options. You can imagine my shock when the administration shortly thereafter emailed a plan late on a 3-day weekend without the promised input of the task force. Here are a few of the questions that need to be answered. Will we have to use our sick days if we contract COVID, or can I claim workers' compensation because I was forced back into the classroom and needlessly endangered? Will my hospital bills be covered? I know that the insurance plan is already running dangerously close to being solvent. Where will we get subs when teachers get sick? On any given day, 100 sub jobs go empty. In the midst of a pandemic, who will volunteer their safety for a mere $90 a day with no health benefits? Will the Polk County School Board provide for the long-term care of those of us who will catch this disease, not while actively fighting the illness? Our next comment is from Catherine Vaughn. We need a superintendent that understands that as a public agent, they have the specific duty to act ethically. When compliance is unethical, we need a superintendent who will reject compliance and fulfill their duty to act ethically on behalf of all students and staff. I can think of no more important duty in a superintendent than that. Our kids deserve and are entitled to moral and ethical representation from their superintendent at the very minimum. We need a superintendent who will lead by example without hesitation. Acting ethically should never be delayed or disputed when it comes to our kids. We need a superintendent who takes their commitment to the code of conduct for all Polk County School Board employees to protect our students from harm in any form, and one who will be fully committed to leading their public agency with accountability to the community for which they promise to serve. Catherine Vaughn, Winter Haven. Our next comment comes from Karen Stockman, Winter Haven. Good morning. I am happy with Superintendent Byrd. However, if she chooses to retire, then I would ask the following to please be considered for future superintendent candidates. Preferably a strong leader that has a good rapport with all levels of employees at the district. One who hopefully has some ESE background or experience that can assist with the recommended improvements suggested in the ESE survey. Also, one who will reach out to Tallahassee and other network supports to bring assistance with funding and education opportunities for our students, especially with vocational and mentoring opportunities. Lastly, I would want the next superintendent to be as visible at the various schools as Superintendent Byrd has been. We have seen her at my son's school several times in the last year. Our next comment comes from Lori Jenkins. In light of the uncertain times in which we are operating, I wanted to address several incredibly important issues facing our district. We should thankfully recognize Mrs. Byrd's service to our district. I think I've already read this comment. Our next comment comes from Robert Nickel. My name is Bob Nickel. I teach at Boone Middle School in Haines City. I hope Miss Byrd stays. I know Billy Townsend is not a racist. Miss Byrd is a strong woman. That's what we need at the top. There's a tremendous amount of pressure coming from Washington and Tallahassee to reopen schools. This morning, Miss Byrd stood up to that pressure. As always, she put the safety of our children first. As for Mr. Townsend, when he wrote, "I'm confident we're going to get her removed," was he speaking of Miss Byrd or former Superintendent Catherine Leroy? He was speaking of Miss Leroy. Billy criticizes when he sees a need to. When Billy criticizes Mrs. Byrd, he is criticizing a school superintendent, not an African-American school superintendent. His criticisms have everything to do with policy. They have nothing to do with race. I hope Miss Byrd stays. I hope Billy Townsend stays. Thank you, Bob Nickel. Our next comment is from Cheryl Reed. As Polk County searches for a new superintendent, we need to look at the important role that a superintendent fills in shaping the educational system. The school superintendent makes important decisions regarding staffing, programs, facilities, and the budget. We need to find someone who will back the teachers and staff to do what is in the best interest of all the students. Bring the school board's vision to life in the district. Demand not only a high standard of education with grades and test scores, but also the safety and security of our students' future, mental health, and general ability to be a productive and respectful member of society. Understanding and compassion. There are young children in the district being Baker Acted without the intent of the law being fulfilled. Work with the charter schools that cater to special needs children. Work closely with the school board, the principals, and the teachers of the district. Listen to the teachers and staff. Understand that when you help all of the students, you protect our future. Individuals' character and ideals count more than just their data on a resume. Please, when considering options for our next superintendent, please look for someone that is a person of character, no matter how far the search takes. Please feel free to open the search to other districts, states, or countries if needed. Teachers are our first line in building a better future. There are so many teachers that deserve to be treated better. Please help make this happen. Our next comment comes from Tracy Selwood. Hello, here's an idea. Save some money and not use a consultant firm. Put out for applications for Polk County only. Have teachers and admins of 10+ years to apply. They have the experience with our school system. Choose from that pool, down to 5. Interview and keep on until you are down to 1. Have those of us who work in the school system to also interview the finalists, like group interviews. This is not hard to do. It will save money and will also give those of us who is willing in the school system a voice. This needs to be completed before the Christmas holiday season also. Tracy Selwood. I have a few more that I can read that came in on the computer or on the
Sure.
email.
Thank you, Ms. Worthington.
This comment is from Lorinda Utter. I do believe we need to immediately begin our superintendent search. The longer we wait to start the search, the longer it will be before we can choose the right candidate. I know there are some board members that will consider which firm is best to help Polk in their search. Mrs. Byrd has given us her retirement date. If we want to have any form of overlap, we need to begin now. As for our school calendar, I appreciate that currently the board is to vote on a new start date. I think that is a wise decision and hope you will continue to look at data as the new dates draw near. I am anxious to return to school. However, that word has two meanings. One meaning is my desire to be with my students. The other is about my own personal health and safety. I prefer face-to-face teaching, but with my own health concerns, I do not think that is wise. I understand from this morning's work session that those at risk should be working with risk management. When are you planning on letting employees know they need to communicate with risk management? Most of my teaching is in small groups where social distancing would be possible. My concern is when moving around the schools, I am itinerant, where social distancing is difficult. I teach gifted students. This is not a subject that does well in the virtual world. The types of discussions and collaboration needed are difficult virtually. I like for them to have hands-on problem-solving activities, for them to be successful in this. They would each need their own set of tools and supplies. I could put together, but will there be resources available to accommodate this? Here's a list of things that concern me and other staff members. Will the school board supply PPE? What will that look like? What will happen when students refuse to wear face coverings? What happens if I or my students test positive? What will the sick leave policy look like? Sincerely, Lorinda Utter, teacher of the gifted at Eagle Lake Elementary and Lakeship Elementary. Our next comment is from Delphine Kendrick. Thank you so much for your willingness to serve the educational community. Based on an email sent from Superintendent Byrd, we will need to fill that position. Please take in consideration Polk County will need a superintendent that will advocate in Tallahassee for their power and the board to solve local school issues. The superintendent will need to pull community, educators, parents, and board members together for the common cause of student success. We may think of the issues differently, but we all honestly love our students and want the best for them. I have witnessed the board, not this board, turn their backs as we voice our concerns. Call for police escorts. We are not criminals. We only want to be ensured that we matter. We want to work together. We are just now really starting to hear each other, and I would like that momentum to continue. We need someone who will allow their administrators to have input about what works for their school population and not just complying with structures that are not useful for their school. We need to be able to offer support throughout the first years of the beginning teacher profession. Intern teaching has to come back as a best practice. Again, thank you so much for listening. And I believe that concludes our comments on that subject.
Okay, thank you. I think we can continue with comments from anything that's on the agenda, which would be the calendar or superintendent.
Okay.
What I'd like to do is continue a little bit longer, and then we'll take a break.
Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
Our next comment comes from Anita Lacey. I don't believe that age should be a focal point. This is in regards to the age for returning. I don't believe that age should be a focal point. Age does not mean that you should be excluded from returning to work. Proper precautions for everyone will keep all safe and protected from COVID-19. Our next comment is in regards to ESE, pre-K and ESE. It's from Danielle Frisbee. How will the teachers in these classrooms be safe when behavior issues, age, and diagnosis get in the way of wearing face masks and following all the other safety protocols? How can teachers be protected when students in these classes mouth, lick, cough, sneeze, and have other bodily fluids that they cannot hold in and have accidents? How can the teachers in these classrooms educate their students that are nonverbal, hearing impaired, when the teachers have to wear masks, face masks, makes in turn will make speech distorted and nonverbal children unable to see the mouth movements? How in an ESE pre-K class can students be socially distant from one another when the curriculum is hands-on, learn through play, and working on a socialization skills? There's not enough centers in the room to keep them all separated, and how can learning take place when they cannot socialize with one another? Can half the students come 2 days out of the week and the other half the other 2 days, and 1 day left for virtual? Or even possible half days all week so that the janitors have enough time to clean the whole school? Will N95 masks be provided to all staff who are in the classroom on the forefront? What protocols will take place when a student has any of the symptoms as far as being sent home? What if the parents do not answer or say they cannot be there until later that day to get them? Or if they say it is just allergies, or they have GI issues that cause them to act symptomatic? I do not feel comfortable with the students returning to the classroom to wait. Will there be an isolated area for them to have to wait until someone comes to get them? Will temperatures be checked before the student steps out of the car on school campus and before they step on the school bus? Just concerns that I have just like everyone else. Thank you, Ms. Frisbee. Our next comment is from Rachel Jackson. Hello, I am writing to voice my concern with the opening of schools in August. I am a teacher and parent within Polk County, and the thought of opening in the midst of a pandemic is not only frightening, but outright crazy to think about. In March, we closed schools when the numbers were nowhere near where they are now. How can we, in good conscience, be sent back to school while numbers continue to skyrocket in our communities? I, like most teachers, want to go back, but not under the circumstances we are facing currently. Do I think we need masks? Yes. But how do you expect a kindergartner or really any student to wear a mask for 8-ish hours a day? It's hard enough for adults to wear a mask for a few hours, and we expect the students to do it all day? That's just one more thing for us teachers to keep up with throughout an already hectic day. Please, for the sake of school staff and students, look at the option of starting the school year with the eSchool option for all students. If we can pivot on a dime in March to teach online, we can do it in August. Thank you for your time. Our next comment is from Sarah Gabbard. We are very excited about our children returning to the traditional school model to be taught by trained teachers. We have no interest in virtual schooling for our children. I am so glad that people who want to quarantine long-term have the choice to explore virtual education and/or obtaining work from home jobs. Our next comment is from Teresa Potter. To all vested, interested citizens in the community, it is difficult to imagine a government, a system of the community, who expects children as well as educators and school staff to work with masks on their faces for 8+ hours per day. That does not seem humanly possible without great risk. It is difficult to imagine not being sick or becoming sick or having backlash with continued carbon dioxide inhalation using masks to cover faces for 8+ hours a day. I don't think that they have stopped to look at the potential risk. They are only looking at the current risk. But if they continue with their nonsensical and practical approach to returning students and teachers and school staff to classrooms so quickly, they will have another pandemic on their hands. This time, it will be from carbon dioxide poisoning and all the other health risks that come with keeping masks on faces for long periods of time each day. The human body was not designed to consume carbon dioxide. It's designed to give it out. Yet they claim that students come first. Students cannot teach themselves. They need teachers and school staff to keep the system of education running. It seems as if educators and school staff are completely being ignored. What about their health and safety, and their families' health and safety as well? Our next comment comes from Cassandra Gibson. Hello, and thank you for taking the time to hear my plea. Please do not open schools here in Polk County in August. Delay the physical opening until we as a state have the situation under control, please. I am truly terrified of what may happen if we do. And yes, nothing may happen, but you do not have that guarantee, and I do not give you the right to play a game of chicken with my health and that of those I love, those I work with, and those whom I must interact with to conduct daily life. I've not heard of a time frame of delay, but to me, starting with a delay of 9 weeks is something that is manageable considering the swirling uncertainty. I do not need to be reminded of how important teaching in person is to a child. Believe me when I say it is just as important to this veteran teacher and to every other person who claims the title of teacher. I miss my kids. I want to see my kids, but I want to see my kids without fear for them or me. Please delay the opening of school. Sincerely, Cassandra Gibson. Our next comment is from Shannon Tate. Hello, please choose for schools to start with e-learning or Polk virtual. With the current positivity rate around 20%, it is not safe for students, teachers, staff, and their families. Please do not open campuses. Our school had a great system for supporting all our students during distance learning. The support staff worked with the teachers and counselors in calling and contacting all students to see what supports they needed to be successful. Thank you. Shannon Tate, Student Success Coach, Senior Sponsor, Haines City High School. We had several comments come in from Nancy Plemons. As a retired teacher, I am appalled at the decision to reopen schools without a firm plan to protect all staff. I have COVID-19. I have been sick for 2 weeks with no signs of improvement. I used every precaution when leaving my house, yet I still contracted this horrible illness. When I say horrible, I mean horrible. Days of fever, body aches, headaches that make you ill, nausea, diarrhea, cough that rattles every bone, systemic pneumonia. I am trying to stay out of the hospital because I fear I would not leave except in a body bag. This is what you are asking your teachers to face. If your teacher gets sick, will you quarantine the entire class for 2 weeks? Will he or she be required to have distance learning lessons ready? There have been days where it has been difficult for me to get out of bed. I can't imagine preparing lessons. The first student who refuses to wear a mask could be the one to spread the virus to their classmates and your staff. What is your plan? Can you honestly say you are prepared to lose life over a mandate from idiots that don't heed advice or have a clue about what they are truly asking? Is reopening worth losing a single life? I sincerely hope that you reconsider until an action plan is fully developed, not an attempt to make DeSantis happy. Think, life is more important. Nancy Plemons, retired. I'll continue with her comment. Is the time still going? Okay. Our next comment comes from Ingrid Cruz. As COVID-19 cases continue to soar in Florida, I am deeply concerned due to the fact that I am a caretaker to not only my 82-year-old father, but also to my 83-year-old mother-in-law. You think the majority of kids won't die from the virus, but they can certainly carry it and/or get ill. They can easily spread it to me, as I see kindergarten through 5th grade on a daily basis in a school that has over 1,000 students. I am 48 years old. I might or might not get sick. This fact doesn't seem to concern you because you plan on opening the schools, which also shows that you do not care about the health or well-being of our students. As I said earlier, I am a caretaker of an 82 and 83-year-old. They both have many health ailments. If I catch COVID-19 from a student, I can easily pass it on to one of my elders. This is a great concern for me. If you can't show concern for students' health or the health of our staff, please show concern and respect for our elders and their health. Thank you. Ingrid Cruz. Our next comment is from Marjorie Patterson, AFSCME, Vice President of Bus Drivers and Attendants. Good evening. I am wondering why we are still having virtual meetings instead of open meetings. The second comment will be safety of not only bus riding students, but our employees, i.e. bus drivers and attendants. The only safety equipment is a hand sanitizer station stationed at the left side of the door at the entrance at the stairwell. I'm not sure who okayed this position, but clearly a bus driver was not consulted. How are bus drivers supposed to access this when needed? And attendants? They are not allowed in front of the standee line and the stairwell. This is absolutely a ludicrous place to install the sanitizing machine. Of course, unless bus drivers and attendants are not supposed to use it. Employees have not been issued any mask or sanitizer through this whole pandemic. We have had to purchase or be given our own. How are the members of this board protecting their employees? Please give us a better answer. Thank you. Dear Ms. Bird, this comment comes from Lisa Bland. Dear Ms. Bird, I have been teaching for 33 years. I absolutely love my students. I found the entire e-learning experience disappointing. I miss the daily interaction with my students. They bring challenges, joy, and possibilities. I am 64 years young with no health issues. Please do not take away the face-to-face learning option. It is the only true learning option for our students. Thank you, Lisa Bland, Jewett Middle Academy gifted teacher. This comment comes from David Thorpe. Superintendent Byrd, fellow board members, community members, and staff, I am writing to you today because I am a high-risk individual and cannot be in attendance. I don't tread on those words lightly and take what is happening very seriously. I have been purchasing PPE ever since this started back in March for my own safety. I have taken serious safety precautions in every aspect of my life. As a Polk County teacher, it is time that I stood up on behalf of myself and the rest of our staff, whether it be our secretaries, bus drivers, custodians, food service, nurse, media specialists, teachers, paraprofessionals, or more importantly, our children and their families. I want you to keep this in the back of your mind as we go throughout my message. As of July 8, 2020, the positivity rate alone in Polk County was a whopping 22.8%. For all of these individuals that are passing rules, regulations regarding the lives of children, teachers, staff across the state, here is what I have to say to you. If you feel that it is necessary that we must go into the classroom and teach, then I want you to do the following. Number 1, hold all meetings in person. No more virtual meetings. No more closed offices to the public. Just open it up free will to everyone. Number 2, all individuals should be distanced no more than 3 feet apart from each other. Number 3, this should occur on a daily basis 5 days a week. If 5 days a week doesn't work, you're required to come and sit in one public school classroom per day for 2 hours minimum. 4, you are required to bring one family member with you to the meetings or to school. 5, these rules apply to the governor, DOE commissioner, legislators, business organizations, school board members, superintendents, and others making the decisions. They too must bring an immediate family member with them. Do not ask of us what you yourself will not do. Number 6, if you are a business member in support of opening schools, you must bring 1/3 of your staff. Please follow the 3 feet social distancing rule. Number 8, if you don't agree to any of these conditions, then perhaps you might think again about what you are asking of students, teachers, and of their respective families. Keep schools in the e-learning mode for the time being. This isn't a game. This is possibly their life, and one life is one too many. Sincerely, David Thorpe. Our next comment comes from Tanya Ramirez. Hello, my comments are as follows. If we are still social distancing our meetings, why are we going back at full capacity? My first option would be starting off distance learning. I am open to staff returning to campus in sessions, certain grades on certain days. This would allow for training and e-learning. If we do return, I believe it should not be on August 10th for students. What is the rush? If teachers and staff feel unprepared, that will only add to the uneasiness of how students feel. Instead, let staff come back in and prepare, train, and learn protocols, and then have students return if deemed safe. 2 weeks after, or even after Labor Day. Most states return to school after Labor Day. This extra time for the staff to be trained and prepared could be extremely useful for a successful year. It will also help teachers and staff feel more comfortable about returning. A few extra weeks could make all the difference in morale, confidence, and effectiveness of our schools. Our next comment is from Tulsi Patel. She is a high school junior. My name is Tulsi Patel, and I would like to elaborate on the school board opening schools this fall. I will be a junior starting collegiate high school next year. Our school will be online for the first semester and will reopen when it is safe to do so. I believe that all high schools should do the same. It is not safe to reopen high schools due to the large sum of students in each classroom. Not only students will be at risk of getting the virus, but so will the staff members, most importantly, the teachers. If the teachers start getting sick, who will be there to properly teach the students? Another major concern of mine is that not all students and teachers are financially stable to take care of themselves if they get the virus, especially the teachers due to their low wages. Personally, I cannot wait for school to reopen, but on the other hand, I strongly believe that schools should only open if I know I will be safe from the virus. If the board decides to reopen, I demand that the board requires masks, hand sanitizer, and other cleaning products for students and staff members to clean the classrooms. Without these precautions, I believe that the school board is not considering the health and safety of their hardworking staff and students. Thank you for your time. Our next comment comes from Catherine Ogburn. Hello. Although we are ready to get back to a normal routine, I do have a couple of concerns about going back to school. I teach at a middle high school that changes classes throughout the day. Here are a few questions that I have. Number one, how are we going to enforce social distancing? Honestly, the enforcement of student IDs has been a nightmare. I cannot imagine how we are going to enforce social distancing with all students there at the same time. Changing classes, buses, PE, and lunch 6 feet apart? This is the main reason that I voted for hybrid. Number two, what policies will be in place if a student has a fever and no one can come get them or no one answers the phone? Number three, what if a student, family member, or staff member tests positive for COVID? What is the policy? 4, from the research, it seems like staff members are at more risk than students. So how will sick days work? How will you protect the school faculty? Number 5, what about pushing back the start date in order to be better prepared? Rather than building the plane while we fly, let's take more time to properly plan. The original survey asked about waiting until Labor Day. Number 6, proper cleaning procedures. How will they be enforced or checked? Will teachers be given Lysol wipes or something similar to clean between classes? Thank you for your time and doing what you feel is truly best for our students and staff members. Our next comment is from Jamie Williams. Dear Polk County Education, I'm gravely concerned about your plans to force any associated educational persons to return to your physical locations due to the scientifically proven and escalating pandemic. Sadly, I almost laughed reading your website credo, Students First. For what? Illness? Death? Deficiency in education as permanent educators fall ill and temporaries attempt to fill in their long, thought-out lesson plans. I didn't laugh in a good way. What happened to protecting the children and underpaid educators? Shame on you for promoting this decision, and I implore you to rescind it immediately. The more I write, I realize how much there is to say. The irony in your proposed plan is ridiculous. Do you believe in educators and education and health? Prove it to the caring citizens and taxpayers. Thank you, Jamie Williams. Our next comment is from Krista Dunbar. Hello, I am writing not as a parent, but as a concerned citizen. I have serious concerns not only for the students, but for the teachers, paraeducators, and other staff members who could potentially be exposed to a virus that could bring serious health issues and in some case, even death to those individuals. In a normal classroom with 29 to 32 students, it would be downright impossible to practice social distancing, and in elementary classrooms, teachers have even further physical interaction with students, especially early elementary students. Furthermore, let's highlight the arts, particularly music education, where we have band and chorus. With chorus, we have students projecting, which can lead to sprays of spit, which could easily allow the virus to spread. Lots of churches around the country are still allowing congregations to come together and sing, but are doing so with masks as an absolute minimum. While I realize I am not a parent or a guardian of a child, or even a teacher myself, I feel as a lifelong resident of Polk County, I cannot in good conscience not speak out. In closing, while I understand that we do have to, unfortunately, live with this virus, we can do so safely with proper cleaning protocols, PPE for our students, administrative staff, teachers, etc. We also can answer the questions that our teachers and their unions likely have. Most specifically, what happens when a student or even a teacher tests positive? Regards. Our next comment comes from Jill Horak in regards to school reopening. As the number of COVID-19 cases break records daily in Florida, I must call on the school board to put the safety of all Polk County School Board stakeholders ahead of the political call to reopen our brick and mortar schools in 3 weeks. As a teacher who is over 65, I am concerned for myself as well as my colleagues, especially those with underlying health conditions. As a mother, I grapple with giving the proper advice to my daughter, the mother of 2 Polk students, about just how safe it really will be to send the most precious beings in our lives back to school. My granddaughters both want to go back to school. I want to go back to school. However, I can't help but wonder how we could live with ourselves should one of the girls become infected, develop lifelong health problems, or even die. Imagine this same scenario playing out in each and every home in the district. I urge you to please listen to the PEA suggestion for returning to school via e-learning. It's not what I really want. I want to turn back the clock and begin school in the usual way. But if I've learned anything in my 66 years on earth, it's that you can't always get what you want. Sometimes you just have to learn to love what you have. Thank you sincerely, Jill Horick. Our next comment comes from Megan Parker, who's a teacher. I want to go back to school so badly. I want my kids to learn and thrive. I want to see them reading and growing. I want my classroom back. However, it's irresponsible to go back given Polk County's current COVID positivity and hospitalization rates. We are significantly worse off than we were back in March. Opening schools to have to close them again is going to do more harm than good for the mental state of students, parents, and staff. Unless we see a significant dip in cases, I think the huge influx of cases from opening schools would be a disaster for our community. Let's put the brakes on reopening and focus on how to make education more accessible for all families. Megan Parker. Our next comment is from Tiffany Rubio. Reopening school campuses is not safe unless done properly. Masks must be mandatory. Masks may be given out to those who do not have them. Strict social distancing rules should be in place, and the campus must be disinfected every 2 days. As for the third e-learning option yet to come out, it should allow IB students to continue in their classes as Polk Virtual School does not. Our next comment is from Jenny Vargas in Lakeland. I was wondering if the county would consider e-learning the first month of school and then starting classes in person after Labor Day. Also, have you considered an AB schedule? For instance, classroom of 20 students divided in half, group A, B. Group A goes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and B Tuesday, Thursday, and the following week they switch and continue rotating weeks. The group that is not in class that day can do e-learning. This can resolve many issues with the social distancing during the day and less students in the class for the teachers to make sure precautions are taken. This comment comes from Eliezer Acevedo. in Lakeland. You want the kids to go back to school at full capacity, yet you are holding virtual meetings. Let's hold your meeting at full capacity. A mask that is not 100% effective is pointless. Even the N95 masks have not proven to be effective, hence all the doctors and nurses that are getting sick. The only real way I see that will slow down the spread is educating the public on social distancing and limiting large gatherings. Now you want to send children to school to touch everything and potentially contaminate others. Do you really think a child will wear a mask for 7+ hours straight? I'm an adult and I have a hard time wearing a mask for 10 minutes. I refuse to wear a mask, but I do practice social distancing. Sending children without guaranteeing their safety is highly irresponsible. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to ask for recess for a quick break. I would like to ask for recess and a quick break, and we will resume in about 10 minutes. So we'll be back at 7:10. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah, really. Y'all got to be good to us now. Come on. We've been here since, very early.
I don't know if they told you in there, we have over 500 emails that we're starting to read on.
Yeah.
So, but we want to make sure we,
I can't, I'll explain. Give me a minute. Nope, we can't
in
possibly.
fact, it's 25 hours worth of public comment.
So there's no way. What was it? No. Yes. Yes. Good evening, and welcome back to the Polk County Public Schools Board Meeting of July 14th, 2020. We just had a quick recess, and we're coming back now to complete our agenda. So the first thing I would like to do is to let everybody know that we have received over 500 emails, and they keep coming in on comments on our agenda items for today, which is the calendar and the superintendent search. So if my math serves me correctly, our colleagues have added up the time. If we allotted 3 minutes per person for Mrs. Warbington to read each email, we would be here for over 25 hours, and that is simply not possible. So what I'd like to do, there's one email that needs to be read into the record because it's regarding the superintendent search. So I'd like to ask at this time, Mrs. Warbington, if you'd be so kind and read that into the record for us.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. This comment comes from Lois Horn Diaz. Dear Polk County School Board, I regret that I am not able to share these thoughts with you in person this afternoon, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak virtually regarding the very important role of the board in choosing the next superintendent of schools. For far too long, I have witnessed Polk County schools choosing to search outside the county boundaries for educational resources. We seem to continually contract with national companies to create curriculum, to develop instructional programs, and to provide staff development. Through the years, these big-ticket items have drained our district's budget, but are often quickly replaced after not living up to their claims. I am sure that I do not need to list them for you by name, but you can ask any teacher who has been with our district for any length of time, and they can easily provide them for you. In a similar vein, I have also observed the tendency of Polk County to hire leaders from faraway places, after overlooking respected local candidates with stellar reputations. Again, I am sure that I do not need to list the numerous times when the appealing outsider has arrived with baggage that would have been better left behind. I understand the tendency to consider a prophet as without honor in his own town, but perhaps it is time for our district to recognize that there is a wealth of talent within our own borders, not just in leadership, but in various other domains as well. Rather than spending 6 figures for trainings of questionable value, do we not have talented and educated folks on staff who could develop a program in-house rather than purchasing yet another technology program that will wind up on the shelf? Might we be able to modify something that we already own for our purposes rather than asking teachers to use canned curriculums? Might we be able to allow them to craft their own creative lessons? Most importantly, as you begin to consider your options for the search for the next superintendent of schools, might you consider the dozens of brilliant, well-educated, proven administrators who are well-known and respected and who have a track record that proves not only their excellence as a leader, but also as a moral and ethical member of the community. Thank you, Lois Horn Diaz, Polk County Teacher of the Gifted, R. Bruce Wagner Elementary.
Thank you, Mrs. Warbington, for reading that additional comment. And as I was saying before, with 500 emails, we don't have enough hours in the day to complete reading all those. So, Mr. Bridges, do you have a thought on that for us tonight?
Yes, Madam Chair. The law of the state of Florida requires you to allow reasonable public comment before the board votes on a proposition. Your policy is to allow up to 30 minutes of public comment, and that any comment that falls outside of that can be taken later at the end of the meeting. Of course, that normally has to do with live comments. As you know, we've been in a posture recently where we have had virtual meetings. This is the first blended meeting, if you will, that we've had. But it did allow for public comment during the meeting, and so you have allowed for everyone who wished to speak to do so. It's my understanding that we have a few more for one other agenda item. I would recommend that you go ahead and let them speak before you take a vote. But with respect to the remainder of the emails, the public notice that went out put everyone on notice that for each email, the public is asked to provide their name, address, agenda item, and public comment so that the staff can properly sort each comment as it applies to each agenda item. For discussion, the emails that are received by 5 o'clock before a 5:30 board meeting would be compiled by the staff and provided to all board members and the superintendent, and that every effort would be made to forward comments submitted after that time, but that all public comments timely received would be appended to the meeting minutes. It is my opinion that you have met the requirement of the law and that you have already allowed for, I believe, about an hour and a half worth of public comments on the email. The remaining emails would certainly be a matter of public record and be appended to the record as represented in the public notice.
Okay, then I think we will proceed in that vein. So as Mr. Bridges explained, the remainder of the emails that have been received will be added to the minutes when the agenda minutes are published by staff. Now, I'm going to take a point of privilege as the board chair to move the public comments regarding items not on the agenda and go ahead and do those now. We have several individuals that have been waiting here very patiently tonight, and I appreciate your patience, and I'd like to go ahead and have them speak before us, and then we'll go back and begin our regular agenda item. So the first person I would like to call forward to speak, oh, and you didn't hear my thing before. As you come up, you are more than welcome to remove your mask to speak, which is fine, and I thank you for that, and I thank you for practicing social distancing protocols tonight, wearing your mask in the building, and washing and sanitizing your hands for the length of time that you are here. Okay, our first person that I'd like to call to speak is Benjamin Wiles. And I forgot to mention, you'll have if you can state your name, address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. My
Yes,
name is
sir.
Benjamin Wiles. I live at 1000 South Lakeshore Boulevard in Lake Wales. And as I told you, for making us wait, I'm about to let you have it. No, I wanted to just speak in front of you and say that I appreciate the time that you guys are putting into this. I know it's an extraordinarily difficult process, and you probably never thought that you'd be doing making such contentious decisions. But that said, I wanted to make a couple of observations. I know you guys are dealing with a lot of information, and one thing that I would like to say is that regarding employee health at the schools, we're making a lot of messages about hand sanitizing and that kind of thing. But I would also like to just point out that I think one of the large factors in keeping the staff healthy is that they have strong immune systems. And so I would like to just encourage that we keep up our messaging on being healthy. I've read that vitamin D plays a big role in combating the COVID. So if we keep that in mind, I think that's actually a substantial and important thing. Also, maybe, well, I'll move on to my next point. The next point I have is about data collection. Now that we're basically giving ourselves an opportunity to go into this in a controlled fashion, there's probably a lot of metrics and data that we can be collecting in a thoughtful manner. I don't know exactly what that is, or, I'm not really a data collection specialist, but perhaps you could talk with your public health agency, see what kind of metrics they would like to receive, and also let the parents know as well, because I would be happy to participate in sharing data so that all of the, people in our school and community, we're all on the same page, and that can be done timely and actively. Again, I'll leave that to you. The next thing I have is something that Ms. Fields spoke to earlier. I have a 5-year-old. She cannot wear a mask for more than about 30 seconds, and when she does, it doesn't really do anything. So I would like to respectfully request that you consider not making the elementary school kids wear the masks. My final point is on outdoor classrooms and education and air circulation. I think in general, it's important that we not, just forget the forest from the trees perspective. In classrooms, I think air circulation is a big deal, and I would like to encourage that where possible, we look into buying fans and chillers and keep the windows open. Maybe that will have an impact.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir, very much. Next, we have Ashley Way. Ashley Way.
Hi, my name is Ashley Way. I live at 2932 Walnut Street in Winter Haven. I'm going to be a first-time teacher at Karen Siegel Academy in the fall. I started there in February as a para, but I don't think we're ready to open schools. It's going to be nearly impossible to get all students to wear masks to properly social distance with the limited space we have at schools. We're also very limited on our availability for cleaning supplies as well as hand sanitizer. Most schools end up running out partway through the year on a normal year. This is definitely abnormal, and if we are cleaning as often as we would need to even think of it as safe, we would run out within 2 months. Ultimately, I think we need to go distance learning for some, if not all, of the fall semester, because with the way cases are rising in Florida right now, we're worse off than we were in March when we disbanded, and it's not feasible to think that our students and our staff can be safe, whether or not they are immunocompromised, whether or not they are completely healthy. It's not worth losing anyone if we can really mitigate that risk. Yes, our reading scores, our test scores may go down, but we can reteach stuff. We can go over curriculum again when we can in person. It's not possible to bring someone back from the dead. And so I don't think that we are anywhere close to able to safely put our students and our staff back in schools. Thank you.
Next, we have Daniel Barrage.
My name is Daniel Burridge. I also live at 2932 Walnut Street. I've been a paraeducator working at Karen Siegel Academy for several years now. And I can say with confidence, every year we do not have enough sanitary products. And even if we did, the procedures we're required to do for our job are not social distancing appropriate. Karen Siegel Academy is a school for students with complex disabilities. I change diapers. I wipe noses. I prepare lunches. The students will not distance if they could, and we have nursing staff that have to get much more personal with our students in medical procedures when doing things like tube feeding or replacing tracheotomy filters. Our students will be put at risk. People like to speculate the mortality rate of COVID-19 before the pandemic is over, and they speculate 1% to 2%. I imagine my school will be more around 10%. We have many students with weakened immune systems. Trisomy 21, colloquially known as Down syndrome, has 2 main organs that it weakens, the respiratory system and the heart. COVID-19 attacks 2 main organ systems, the respiratory system and the heart. If we go back in August, we will see death. The reason I was not on the regular agenda is the regular agenda was for an August 24th start date. If we go back in September, we will see death. Unless Florida really buckles down and gets its act together, we won't be safe to go back in December. Just earlier this evening, there was a movement that was passed unanimously to delay voting until next week about proposing a mask mandate. A week in a pandemic is more lives, and COVID-19 doesn't only kill people. It permanently disables people by weakening the respiratory system and heart in ways that we don't yet understand. I hated distance learning. I think most paras hated distance learning and most teachers hated distance learning. We weren't adequately trained. We didn't have a system in place to adequately implement distance learning. And our focus should be on bringing distance learning up to a standard that brings pride to our district. Pushing back the date of school is putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, and it will not serve our students and families adequately. We have parents that believe masks cause you to get carbon dioxide poisoning, and you're telling me that their students will be effectively socially distancing in ways that won't put me and my family and the families of other educators at risk.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Jody Kegler. Hi, come on up.
Hi, my name is Jody Kegler. I live at 5930 Cruise Lake Road, Lakeland, Florida, and on the border of Highland City. I have only one now. I'm raising my grandchildren. I live alone with them. And I work nights. I work on a COVID floor. I can't have my kids at home trying to learn. The one graduated, but I've got a 9-year-old at home. I can't stay up all day. It takes him from 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening just to get done what he normally would do in a regular classroom. I understand everyone's concern, and I understand, but why not put up like plexiglass partitions around the children's desks so they are 6 feet, and if they cough, they will, banks do it, 7-Eleven's doing it, everywhere you see is doing this. And when they're single filing down the hall, have the teachers have them 6 feet apart walking down the hall. I mean, we social distance at home, we use masks, we wash hands. I know I hear a lot of people saying, oh, we don't need masks, we don't need to do this. This is all a government conspiracy. I'm really tired of this. I'm watching death all the time. But I understand that Tucker didn't do well at all during this stay-at-home thing. The ADHD does not allow him to sit still for 9 hours trying to do homework that I didn't learn how to do that way. So I don't know how to teach him how to do some of these core curriculum things, some of these new math things. I know how I do it. And that's the only way that I can teach him, but is he gonna be behind then because of that? So my biggest concern is, yes, I think that we need to take big precautions and we need to implement a lot of safety, but keeping them home, socially, it's not going to help. Kids are not going to learn how to deal with people. They need to learn how to become adults. That's our job as parents, is to teach them how to be adults. If we can't do that, and we have to keep them home all the time, and they never learn how to use manners outside of the house, I want to know that my kids are well-behaved outside of home. They need to be around other students. Yes, they have to be social distance. Yes, they have to wash their hands. Yes, they have to wear a mask. That's life. That's just life. Not all of them like that. Not all of them want that. But that's the way it is. So they're going to have to get used to it. But keeping them home, I think, is a really bad idea, especially for kids who can't pay attention anyway. So, thank you.
Very much. Our next person is Jeremy Kegler. Hope I pronounced that right.
You did actually. Most people say it wrong. So, same last name as the one who went just before. She's my mother. I live at 5930 Cruise Lake Road. I stand sympathetic with all the speakers and protesters driving around outside. I'm sure you guys saw the cars with all the signs. And agree that the acceptable number of deaths of students and teachers as a result of whatever decision we make is 0. My mother just spoke before me on her position of being a single parent who does not have the ability to teach at home. I speak in agreement because I know firsthand, as I was a primary stand-in teacher before summer break started. As she mentioned, she works nights, and so I helped out. I can tell you that my nephew, whom my mother is the guardian for, does not effectively learn in an at-home environment. And I'm sure he's not the only one. He is special needs with severe ADHD and physically cannot sit still and literally cannot stay focused. He needs a structured environment a proper teacher can provide and a social environment the other students can provide. I don't say the word need lightly. It is a need for him. I'm not from here. I'm from New York City. I came here to assist my mother during this tough time, but I can't commit to being a permanent member of the at-home learning process, even in any little bit of effectiveness I can provide. I think it's completely unacceptable that the only thing I've heard from anyone holding office so far, all the way up past DeSantis and up to DeVos, is schools open up, but with absolutely no plan as to how that will be done safely, and no plan I've heard that teachers will be sent back to work safely, and even if they have a choice. In fact, I've heard from a teacher here that she doesn't have a choice. If they open, she goes in. Whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. It's obviously just from what she said. I'm extremely nervous to send my nephew back to school in a brick and mortar environment because I haven't heard a single thing that shows me how they will be safe, or even if you all care that they're safe. Surely I know that is a concern of yours, but I just don't see it. I learned a great bit of advice from a writer that I know, somebody who I admire greatly, and it's advice that I encourage you all to heed as well. Show, don't tell, meaning show us how you care, don't tell us that you care. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. And next, I have Christy McCullough.
Thank you. Christy McCullough, 24 Lake Arrowhead Drive, Winter Haven. I was in my car listening, so it was safer, distancing. So distance learning doesn't work. We saw that last spring. Have you guys heard that? Obviously, the state has heard that, but I will maintain that that is false. The statement that we need to say is without proper planning and without student engagement, no type of learning can succeed. So when asking what's best for our students, we seem to be comparing last spring, which was a mess, to pre-COVID in-person school, because that type of school doesn't exist anymore. So group projects, hanging with your friends at lunch, hugs from your teacher because you're having a bad day, that doesn't happen. It can't. So we have to recognize that that school is gone, plan for the best future. We were out of time. Thank you so much, Ms. Bird, for you guys proposing the extra time. We needed that badly. So let's use this time wisely. Let's be ready to give our students their devices when they register. Let's go ahead and get Schoology out to our teachers. We need to learn to use it. We'll use it on our own time. Let's have training for our teachers and for our parents. Have it virtually, have it log in, have helplines for questions. Let's schedule these voluntary things so people can be prepared. Let's work with community partners to address inequities. We have inequities of Wi-Fi, of computer literate parents. We have inequities of food. Community partners can help us with that. Clearly communicate the student expectations as outlined by the task force. I was one of those. All these are not hard, but they take one thing, time. Let's use our time wisely. I want to go back. My ag students learn way more interacting with animals than reading or watching videos, but will they even be allowed to do that? Will they be allowed to take the bus to the land lab? Will other community members, like vets that help teach my class, will they be allowed to come in? I don't know. So will they be more engaged in teams than sitting isolated at their desk, working individually? I'll leave you with one final thought. You've had many meetings. They're all virtual. This is the first in person. this is way more social distance that I will have. But this is what we have. The FFA has canceled their national convention in October. They did this before the spike. It is virtual because it is not safe. It is not safe for 5 days. We're asking to go back for 7 hours a day for 180 days with 2,000 to 3,000 students. Use common sense. Think about whether you would send your husband or wife to that classroom to work or your child to be students, and stand up to the state to do what is needed to keep Polk County safe, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next, is there any other folks to speak regarding any issues on or off the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move on. Next, we have our regular agenda. And the first item, number 4, is the superintendent search. And it was to allow public comment regarding our superintendent search. And that was the purpose of the meeting this evening, and I believe we have done that. Next, I'd like to move to item number 5 under Human Resources, 2020-2021 Polk County Schools Instructional Calendar for students, teachers, and paraeducators. So at this point, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the COVID 2020-2021 schools calendar, which has been revised based on our meeting this morning.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Fields.
Ms. Cunningham, I would like for the superintendent to kind of summarize our conversation this morning about the revised calendar, and that as we get closer to the 24th of August, if the spike has not leveled off, that we would go back and revisit deferring school beginning as it relates to brick and mortar and implementing the distant learning for all students. Ms. Jackie, Ms. Superintendent Burke, can you expound on it? Because I think everyone needs to understand that we know that things might not get better by August the 24th, and if it doesn't, we are aware that we're going to need to make some revised decisions related to brick and mortar.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. Yes, we had a very robust discussion this morning regarding the 3 options. First of all, the 3 options which will give parents an option to, if they do not select going to brick and mortar, they can have an additional option of e-school or Polk virtual school. But we recognize as a community and as a district that we have to watch the numbers and look at the numbers. So in consultation and collaboration with the medical experts, and we're so thankful that they were here guiding not only the task force, but I have been in constant communication with Dr. Jackson from our local Department of Health. I believe we talk daily. Even on the weekends, we're talking about what are the numbers telling us, what is the recommendation, what does it mean for our community. So when we saw what was happening recently with the rising cases, one of the things that I mentioned to Dr. Jackson, and she fully supported, and so the other medical experts, we need to look at delaying at this time, because we need to understand that these numbers are going to continue to rise. We're going to have to revisit it again. So we did delay the opening of school for students to August 24th, the teacher return to the 17th, and we're monitoring those numbers. Again, in consultation with the medical experts and the Department of Health, we're going to look at those numbers once again. If the numbers are steady trending upward and the spike is steady coming upward in Polk County as well as the state of Florida, we will be coming back to you again to have another discussion about how we're going to move forward beyond the 24th. So I want the public to know this is just not where we're saying, yes, we're coming back on the 24th to brick and mortar, because we do have to watch what's happening here within our state as well as within our county.
Thank you, Superintendent Byrd.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Byrd. I really do appreciate that, because we did have a lengthy discussion, and I think a lot of folks maybe who spoke today and tonight maybe weren't aware of that. So thank you for the update, and I would just take a moment to ask folks, When you get a chance to watch our work session from this morning, it was streamed live and will be available through our website to be viewed. We had 4 different medical professionals and the full board in attendance, and it would really shed some light on what we're thinking moving forward. But the key word is we're all being flexible because we don't know what the future is. And we're asking everybody's patience because while we are saying tonight, July 14th, 2020, we want to now open up on August 24th, that could change in a matter of days. So we're just saying thank you for your patience. Okay, we have a comment from Mr. Townsend.
Yes, thank you. And I would reiterate that everyone should invest the time to watch that discussion this morning. I mean, not only is it very, very informative, it shows what this board and staff are capable of doing when we're collaborating and sort of feeding off of each other in terms of thinking things through. For me personally, as a board member, there's been some misconception from people who have talked that opening physical schools, the concept requires people to go into them, like either as a child or as a staff member or an adult. If there is any vote that I can take as a board member not to coerce anybody, I'm going to take that vote. I have no intention ever of forcing any adult staff member into a school, of forcing any child into a school. What I am open to, depending on conditions and other things, are voluntary pockets of resource that we can offer to the kids who don't have good connectivity. I didn't catch the woman's name that spoke right at the end, but that situation's real. She's desperate, and we have to be thinking about how to try to address that too. And the only way I know through it at all is to try to match her strategically with people like Ms. Bland, who spoke earlier about being willing to take risks in an open-eyed way. That's conceptually what's in my head when we talk about any kind of opening of physical schools. It's purely voluntary. It's purely designed to match and help the kids who most need it. It also may be impossible given the reality of the COVID spike at any given time. But rest assured, if I can take a vote, you're never going to be required to put yourself at risk. And secondly, if I can take a vote, you're never going to lose your job because you don't want to do that. I mean, as long as we have money and as long as I have the ability to vote, I will take those votes. Now, there's all sorts of questions of authority and who can do what and where the money comes from that may be beyond the elected board's control, that may be beyond the appointed staff's control. I just want everybody to understand my intent as a board member in this. And additionally, one of the things we talked about was the decision to open physical schools at all coming back before the board. I think we're a little squishy still on how that will happen, but I think everybody understands that it's much better if we make a collaborative decision on it. And I think, this is 100 years from now, people are going to be writing about the decisions that people in power made. Up until this point in America, people in power have not made very good decisions. We've done worse than most countries by a long way. I just want to try to do the most humane, best decision making I can do, knowing that probably it's we're probably going to mess up in places, and we're going to have to try to fix them. But I think if you watch the discussion this morning, you will see a group of people, staff and elected board, really giving all they can to try to find a path through this that keeps people as safe as we can, while also keeping people safe from the harms of not being able to be in school. And those are real things. So, but one last thing. I do, the setting the date as the 24th does allow us to collect intent data. And I'm going to be very interested to see who wants to be in physical schools, who wants to be there. I think that helps us plan, that helps us get a sense of what the demand is, and then if that demand can be matched by anybody who's willing. So I think it's important that we get that data in place so we can kind of have the demand structure in our head. And so that's why I'm supportive with moving forward with this. But if it looks like it does today or anywhere close to it, I'm not going to be supportive of opening brick and mortar schools. And even if it's much better, I'm not ever going to vote to coerce anybody into it. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. And now we have Ms. Fortney.
Hi, thank you. Ms. Porteous, apparently you were in charge of redoing the calendar. Are the only changes would be the start date for our teachers and staff? And are we still going to get our 196 days in? Did it affect the end of the calendar at all, or have we not looked that far?
So actually, it does affect, good afternoon.
Hi.
Well, hi. So yes, it actually does affect the end of the calendar as well as the beginning of the calendar. We have had to, well, we did move some things. Let me see if I can share my screen with you.
Yay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Hold on for 1 second.
And then I have two other statements, so please don't cut me off, Ms. Cunningham. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, so this is the revised calendar. After Mrs. Byrd announced that she recommended, rather, that we were going to change the dates, you'll see that the beginning of school now starts on August 17th, and first day for teachers is August 17th, and then first day for students is August 24th. So everything was pushed down accordingly. Essentially, our Thanksgiving break remains the same, and so does our winter break. So winter break also remains the same for both staff and students. However, if you continue to move down, spring break also remains the same. And I'm just hitting on the big ticket items that parents tend to plan around, and so does staff. However, if you look at graduation, we did move graduation down by a month, because if you look right down here, the last day for students and staff is now July 9th and July 10th, respectively. I'm sorry, June. I apologize. June 9th and June 10th.
I about fell out on that one.
I apologize. We added 2 weeks, not 2 months, thankfully. So June 9th is the last day for students, and then June 10th is the last day for staff. All of the other
Ms. Porteous, on our sheets, it says June 8th and June 9th. Has that been changed?
Yes, that has been changed. We noticed a correction because we were working so quickly earlier. We had to correct it. I will send you this updated sheet.
Okay, thank you so much. Please continue.
Yes, ma'am. You're very welcome. But essentially, back to Mrs. Fortney's question, everything has pretty much remained the same. So we just kind of shifted everything down by 2 weeks or so.
Thank you. My next statement is I'm going to piggyback off Ms. Cunningham, and I encourage everybody not only to watch the work session, but watch the superintendent search firm's presentations. and feel free to contact me with your thoughts. Some people have already done that. I asked the board for a privilege of 3 minutes. I think it was 3 minutes. And I'd like for the public to hear what I had to say. And I still would beg for the fellow board members to go back and listen to what I feel like is very important that we are all in consensus on. And then my last question is for, I guess, Mr. Bridges or Ms. Cunningham. The comments that did not get read, are those still going to be entered as public record? I've had some people reach out to me with concerns that they did not get their letter read.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. They will be appended to the minutes and will be a matter of public record.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Fortney. Ms. Miller?
Thank you. I want to remind people of the trauma done to children and families when it's, you're going to come back, you're not going to come back, you may come back. I would rather have pushed this out to Labor Day for students, but I am willing to move this along if by the 24th, I think you said, I'm sorry, by the next meeting, may not be the 24th.
28th.
The 28th.
Yes, ma'am.
By our next meeting, we will have all data, or most of the data that's been taken by then to review. I don't want to keep telling families. I mean, we have working families that need to provide child support, or child care. I want to make sure we give them a final. It may not work out, and so I want to not traumatize them and keep pushing this out 2 weeks at a time. So I would like to review the data then and knowing who's planning to go brick and mortar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Anyone else? Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did have a rather lengthy discussion about this, of course, during our work session, and I offered some thoughts, and I'd like to share them here. I will be supporting this recommendation from the superintendent. But as I said earlier, I'd just like everyone to know where I stand on this issue. I support an option. I support an option for both parents and teachers, and that option will be they have the choice of bricks and mortar or a virtual option, which could be e-learning or the virtual school. And that if they choose a virtual option, I understand if they choose a virtual school, that could be conceived as leaving their original school. Is that correct, or am I wrong about that, Madam Superintendent?
If they go Polk virtual, they'll still be with the district. Now, I want to be very clear. If someone chooses to go outside of our three options and go to Florida virtual, they will be leaving the district themselves. But as far as our third option, they will be tied to their school.
Okay, thank you. So if they chose Polk version, which is our, I guess we're calling that e-learning?
No, it's Polk virtual.
Polk virtual, okay.
Yes, Polk virtual.
Then there would be no repercussions if at such time as they come back to their regular school. So that's my position on the matter. And I asked that specific question of Superintendent Byrd, and as she did then, she's clearly indicated what to expect in those cases. So those are my thoughts. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Anyone else? Ms. Reynolds?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to reiterate a little bit of what Mr. Wilson said. We had a great discussion this morning about what the three options will be. And really, right now, it's all about options. We can't have a one-size-fits-all model because our children are unique, our teachers are unique, and each family's in a unique situation as to what health and safety truly means for them. There's some that safer at home is not truly safer at home, and they need to be at that school campus. So that's where these options are options. So we're hopeful that each family will have an option that fits them. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Fields?
Just one last comment. This morning, as you all said earlier, there was great discussion. Encourage everyone that can to watch it. But one of the things that was questioned to the superintendent is that will teachers and parents be working from the classroom? And the superintendent said that's going to be optional. And correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent Byrd.
Learning with
Yes,
e-school?
with distant learning.
With Polk virtual, they will be they will not be at the classroom, but with e-school, they can be at the school, yes. We are really looking at that model. That was one of the models that we talked about, having them in the classroom where they can use their smart boards and things of that nature for their students, that they can utilize that. So we like that option to have them in the school where they can utilize all the materials. Like Ms. Fortney said earlier, all her materials were in her classroom. You can't bring everything home. So we will be encouraging that. Once we get the data, then we can do a deeper dive into that and have more conversations with our teachers union and go from there with how we're going to set that up for our teachers. But that is a very valid option for have them in their classrooms and having them do the virtual from there with them in e-learning, yes.
Just wanted to make sure it was understood that we're not going to force them to do anything. That's not our goal.
No, that's not our goal to force.
And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that it's called having an option.
Right.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, one thing I would like to add is that I know this is a very stressful time for everyone as we are looking at what we do and how we serve our children. The board members are absolutely correct. This is about options for our family. They have access for options. We're never going to please everyone with everything, but we are trying to make sure we accommodate our community, our teachers, by giving them options to have a selection. And that's what we're doing. So I encourage them to please, when they receive the intent, please fill out that information so we can get it back and we can gather such data to make these informed decisions.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the 2020-2021 COVID school calendar. At this time, I'd like to take a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Okay, the motion carries. Okay, next on our agenda would be our attorney's report, and I don't believe we have one this evening. Is that correct, Mr. Bridges?
No, ma'am, but if you would allow me to make one comment, I would want to point out to folks, there's been some conversation about when the board should meet and how it should meet, and some interest from the public about that. And I just wanted to clarify for everyone that the school board is a public body governed by Florida's Government in the Sunshine Laws, and the school board cannot discuss those things outside of a public meeting. So I would beg the indulgence and the forbearance of the public so that when we have those kinds of conversations, they have to be in a public meeting. They can't be done in private before the meeting. So I just thought I would mention that since it has been a topic of conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges.
Yes, ma'am.
Next on our agenda would be our auditor's report, and I do not believe we have a report this evening, but I do know that Mrs. Matthews is going to be having one on the July 28th work session and board meeting. Next, we come to our board member reports this evening. I know it's kind of late, so I would simply ask you all to be courteous and kind with your comments and your length of comments this evening. Let's start off with Mr. Townsend.
Sure. Just very briefly, there was some things said earlier. I want to address the one thing said by Kim Elmhorst. I sent an email to Rick Elmhorst, who is a reporter for Beta News 9. He had done a public records request for some texts between me and the superintendent, which I provided, and I became aware somehow that his niece was apparently a supporter of my opponent, which is means nothing at all. I congratulate her for her political involvement. I sent a note to Rick to make sure he disclosed that. I am formerly a reporter, known Rick for a long time, and I do my own public writing. My only concern was that if there was some story done, that Rick disclosed his personal connection. That was it. There was no attack. In fact, if you guys heard the email read, it was very, very polite. So that's that. On some of the other issues, I just, again, I find it a little bit sad because of how successful I thought the meeting was this morning, how intellectually robust, how collaborative, sort of what might have been. I think if you heard a little bit of the criticism, you didn't hear anything specific. I'm always willing and able to answer any specific concern about anything I've done in the course of doing this job, but I feel like all of my behavior is entirely appropriate. I wouldn't change any of it. Not going to change. I take oversight really seriously. I take representing the public really seriously, and that's really all I have to say. Well, and I should say, I think Mr. Fields' comments, suggest how irrational this has gotten for a handful of people. I think people can hear what he said and make judgments for themselves as to whether the board is the equivalent of what he discussed there. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. And next, Ms. Fortney.
Yeah, I'm brief because I said everything I needed to say at the end of the work session when the last presenter was off or done. And yeah, I have a little bit of an issue with some of the analogies that were made personally, and I'll stop at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fortney. Ms. Reynolds?
I encourage everyone to watch the work session today. We had great discussion there, and I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Ms. Fields?
I would just reiterate what Ms. Reynolds just said. I also want to thank the staff for their hard work today. They've been here since before we got here, 9 o'clock this morning. Some of us got here like at 8:30, but they were here working and everything was already set up. I know you all did some things prior to the day, and I just want to thank you all because I know it's not easy. I know it's hard work, and that's not go unnoticed by us. That's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to take a moment and thank the members of the task force, the reopening task force. I know they put in an awful lot of hard work and time and effort, and I know other board members have said this as well. I just want to say thank you all for all your hard work and effort. And though that concludes my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Ms. Miller?
Thank you. I took the, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I took our break to write down a few thoughts so I could get them out as concisely as possible. So I can tell you how deeply disgusted I am by the actions of Mr. Fields tonight. You can imagine that my phone has not stopped blowing up and I cannot get to the messages. People are very disgusted and they are apologizing for his behavior, which is unfortunate. Many people who Mr. Fields thinks he represents are outraged by his actions. I do not take that kind of showboating seriously, but some people are very upset. I am sad that a man that claims to be a Christian is so vile. I'm also ashamed that our superintendent decided to participate in such foolishness. Our executive that is paid $250,000 a year with a benefit package is not a victim. You would not call a man a victim. As a proud woman leader, I will show her more respect than she has ever shown me. This victim narrative that Mr. Fields and others have spun since the day the superintendent and I have met has overshadowed her true leadership skills that I believe in. I ask hard questions. I hold people accountable. I called the superintendent out privately because I do not blog, and I try to keep my private conversations private. I called the superintendent on something that she did by I had an agenda item that she decided to take off the agenda on her own. That's against board policy. And she was very angry that I was holding her accountable. Guess who I was trying to help? The conversation I was trying to have with the board was about transportation for kids with disabilities. The ones that, the data points that really get left behind. That's what I was working on when I angered her by reminding her that she could not remove things from an agenda that a board member put on. It is our policy. I was elected and waited months for the superintendent to meet with me. She wanted nothing to do with me from day one. I met with officials throughout this county to understand how should I approach someone so guarded, and I tried to figure out why she was so guarded. I learned she was told from the beginning by the Fields that I was out to have her removed. I was shocked at that time, and I worked for months to try to develop a relationship. I worked for months, almost a year. Nothing worked. This is not the behavior of a successful executive. I even tried to suggest we have some kind of coach to help with board relations. She was not interested. So for all the great things that Mrs. Bird has done, her legacy will be someone who isolates and ignores people instead of trying to work with them. Let me lean in so Mr. Fields can hear me. Your outlandish behavior will not silence me. You will not intimidate me. I will continue to work for kids. I look forward to hiring a superintendent who does not choose you as their go-to advisor, but someone of higher moral character. You owe the Floyd family an apology for your circus that you tried to create with his memory. And I think we need to get back to work. We are in the middle of a crisis, and I'm ready to work for kids. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Well, I would like to ask a member of our staff, Mr. Judd Spruce, if he would please come into the room. I know he thought he was off the hook today. While he is making his way in here, can you make sure the camera goes on Mr. Spruce? And all the guys, come on out here. We want to see you. This young man has a birthday today, and he has spent it with us since about 7 o'clock this morning. And I would lead us in singing a happy birthday to you, but I'm not sure. Do we have a person that wants to put us on key and we can sing?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Judd. Happy birthday to you.
And I just want to say, you're an incredible human being, because you could have taken your birthday off instead of been subjected to all of this for the last, what time is it now? It's 8 o'clock, so from, what time did you get here this morning? 7, 6, 5? About 7, okay. So the man's been here 13 hours working on behalf of children and schools because he cares, and that's really commendable, Judd. You're always a great go-to person for any questions, but the fact that you took your day, which was your personal birthday, and spent it with us means more than I can put into words. So God bless you, and I hope you have many, many more happy birthdays. You're welcome. Yay!
I want to thank Susan personally for all her hard work.
Thank you. Okay, now I would have a few comments. I promise I'll be brief. I would like to thank each of you out there in the community that took the time to email or call me due to this pandemic. You expressed your views regarding our superintendent search and the reopening of schools. I have read each email, although I have not responded to each email because there are so many of them. Regarding our superintendent search, we had 4 companies present their proposals earlier today in our work session. Our next step is to have board discussion, which will be in work session on July the 28th. And from that point, we will determine as a board how we want to move forward and which company we would like to hire to move forward with the search. I also want to commend Susan Warbington, our executive assistant, who did an awesome job in preparation for our work session today. Each of the executive firms submitted proposals, information, and she and Linda did an extraordinary job putting it together in a notebook and giving it to the board in enough time that everyone could review it and be ready for discussion today. So let me say to you, I give you my heartfelt thanks for doing that for all of our board. Thank you, Susan. Regarding the reopening of schools, I would like to commend each person who volunteered to be on our reopening of schools task force and who dedicated their time and their talent to meet together and work on the proposals presented to us this morning. The last time I looked at the list, there were 98 individuals from across Polk County that have served in some way on this reopening task force. So I say thank you so much. Their recommendations included parental options for their students' education as we begin to formulate how to reopen schools. So these items will be formalized and communicated to everyone. If you're interested in knowing the details that we have as of today's date, please watch the work session that we had this morning from 9 until about almost 1 o'clock regarding the reopening of schools, the plans, and the question and answer with our medical professionals. I think you'll be well informed if you get the chance to do that. I share the concern, as you all do, for the health and safety of our students, our staff, our parents, and community. To that end, we must all continue to stay vigilant and make the best decisions day to day. And I know some folks have spoken and said, come on, make a decision, let's move on. That's easier said than done because the numbers and the data change daily. So we need to remain flexible and to adapt as more information is provided to us all on a daily basis. Keep in mind that there is no manual, there is no roadmap, and there are no best practices. We are doing them as we go along. We are human, and this pandemic is very unsettling to us all. We're all in a different journey, health-wise, professional-wise, career-wise. So I want to thank you in advance, community, staff, students, and everyone listening, for your patience and understanding as we navigate this journey together. Thank you so much, and I appreciate our staff. Again, 14, 15 hours they've been here setting all this up for all the different meetings today. And I know we singled out Judd because it's his birthday, but to those of you now sitting in the room who have given up your entire day and then some, I really thank you for making this possible so that we can start to get our kids on the road and back in schools. We have done our public comments. Is there anything else that needs to come before the board this evening? Bishop Mincy, did you want to say a few words? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. All right, sir.
To our board chair and to all the board members, COVID-19 has not helped us. No. It looks like we have gone backwards. I guess it's bringing out the evilness that is in all of us, because all of us have some problems and some issues that we all deal with in life. But it looks like, with the thing being unknown, that it should push us to being more loving and more kind and more understanding and wanting to find ways by which we can find common ground and see the importance of tonight. Amen. We say our children is who are important. We have found board members that have not been supportive. They say that they love children, but I've been here with you all, amen, month after month. I sit and listen as you talk. I hear your comments. I hear you say this and that and the other and what you feel, but there have been some situations that you chose not to come and support our children. I don't have a child in school. I have some grandchildren that are in school, but these are our children, and I'm concerned about it. I think our superintendent have showed that interest in all of our children. She's not perfect. You ain't perfect. None of us are perfect. All of us got some problems and some situations and some things that we deal with. But the saddest part of the whole situation to me is that we allow our flesh to rise up and it does and says things, and we treat each other ways that we shouldn't because of who we think we are. All of us, we may be different colors, but all of us got one color blood that is in all of our veins, and one God made all of us. He didn't make one group of people to be better than another group of people. We created that monster from history. You go back and find history will tell you that somebody created that. God did not create that. So we created a problem. So we got to live with the problem. And you would think since COVID came that it might bring us to understand that we could do better than where we are. But we are not doing better. And I think, our government, our leaders of the world have not stopped to say to God, Lord, show us what we should do or how we should do, what steps we should take that might change COVID. Nobody, I haven't heard the president say it, I haven't heard the governor say it, not many even pastors and leaders to say, let's call for a fast, let's call for a prayer meeting, let's call and ask God to give us direction. We just going on our own, and we want to do what we want to do, and everybody think they know, and nobody don't know but God Almighty, because He is the one that have allowed us to be where we are in the situation we're in. So tonight, somebody asked me today, was it going to continue to support? I'm going to try my best to stay with you. I'm going to try to stay with you because I don't want you to say because Superintendent Byrd gone that I won't come support the board. I want to try to stay with it because you know why? Somebody needs to be here I pray for I told you all this once before, I pray for y'all every time I pray, I call your name. Whoever your name is, I call it. Lord, remember so-and-so, remember their family, because that's my responsibility. The Lord told me to pray for those that are in authority. So you all are in authority. I try to remember that. These are things that I think that we need to see is important. We don't have everybody doing that. People don't care about praying. They don't care about God. They don't care about nothing. But we are judges of each other, and we pass our judgment, how we feel and what we think. But it's sad to say that we are in this place that we're in tonight. I mean, and it could switch out tonight, and everybody in here could be gone tomorrow. We're not guaranteed we're going to lay down. My mom used to say, just because you lay down tonight don't mean you're going to get up in the morning. So the main thing I think about is always try to have your heart clear. So whenever your time comes, that you will be clear. But these are the kind of things that I'm looking at, and it saddens me every time I think about where we are, where we should be, we've made some great strides. God has brought us from a long ways. People say they appreciate it, but then they don't appreciate it because they have done other things, said other things. So only thing we'll speak is the truth. And like I said this once before, I don't care what you say, the truth might go all the way around over yonder and come back, but when it come back, it's going to be the truth. A lie will run out because lies can't stand. Jesus told his disciples, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And that's what I want to be, is a free person wherever I go, wherever I see you all at. I want to be able to speak to every one of you, smile, treat you kind, because I believe that's what we all deserve, to be treated kind. All of us are human beings, and we should show concern for one another. But all of the other foolishness that goes on, it's really time out. It's really time out. And our children, as I've heard you all in the discussion today, trying to figure out how we're going to go back. I'm hoping and praying that, and I know nobody going to tell me, all the people that sent them emails and whatever they sent, if they had a thought in their mind that Superintendent Byrd was going to jeopardize the staff and these children, take that lie back and get the hell where it came from, because that isn't the kind of woman she is. Say what you want to say. that is an account. She have shown me, and she have shown this community what kind of woman she is. It may be denied, people may not want to acknowledge it, but she have showed us that she have put her life on the line for all of our children. So tonight, I pray the blessings of the Lord be upon you as we go forward in the days ahead, that God will send relief. But you know, we created a problem because our governor didn't shut us down. Our president said, let's go. So when you don't stop, sometimes you just got to stop. The Lord told Moses to tell the children, be still and know I'm God. Sometimes you got to stand still. Don't know what you're going to do. We always want to, that's our problem. We always want to figure out where we're going. That ain't your job. It's not your responsibility. Your job is to let him lead, and he will lead us. Thank you tonight. Be blessed, and God will take you.
Thank you, Bishop Mincy. The next order of business is adjournment. Board members, there being no further business, this meeting of the Polk County School Board is now adjourned.